we have a special guest today. Welcome to the Connecting the Community with Chris podcast show. And we have Sarah Barker, a special guest that is a well-known senior advocate that founded Connect Our Elders, that specializes in advising the process for anybody that actually needs care in their home. Anyone that's 65 and up, and it sounds like that even anybody who actually is younger too who needs help. So welcome to our show.
Chris, thank you so much. I feel very honored to be your guest today. I've been following you for a long time, and I know that we've had a couple meetings and conversations. So I am super excited to be your guest today. Thank you.
Well, I'm honored too as well. You do such great work, and I know that you're passionate and your purpose has always been there. And so that's what we like to have on our show as well too, is people who could serve the purpose in our senior community or just in the care in general. So what I'd like to know is, how did you get involved in this industry? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
By accident. So I was studying to be an investment banking representative. I was going to go to work for a mergers and acquisitions firm. And this estate planning attorney I knew in San Diego through networking, a fellow veteran, sent me a job opening that he saw because he knew the owner of the home care company. And he said, Sarah, I really think that you should take a look at this, because what he knew about me that I hadn't recognized in myself, I had gotten out of the military recently, like completely out at that time, and sort of a loss of identity, a loss of this higher purpose. And so while I had great jobs and was performing, I didn't feel fulfilled. And what he recognized in the elder care space was that I could feel fulfilled as if I was serving a larger purpose and still make a good living to be able to survive in San Diego.
Yeah, so obviously, your heart was there, and also too, as you had the experience, you had leaders around you in your environment. Obviously, we can't lead unless we have individuals around us to surround us, but you do have experience in actually advising the elderly community, because we want to deeper into your background. So, like, how did you even come up with the name Connect Our Elders, and like, why the elderly community?
So when I first got into elder care, it did happen by chance, right? That first introduction, but I immediately fell in love with it. And it's because typically in our society compared to other countries, we do not do as good of a job of keeping our elders forefront of mind and not forgetting them, right? They just kind of get forgotten. I'm not saying everyone, right? But as a general rule of thumb, we've got a lot of elders that are just forgotten in our society. And I feel strongly that we have a responsibility to care for those that laid the foundation for the lives that we live today. And you mentioned having good people around us. I did enter the space with a wonderful network of people that I met through an organization called Provisors, that as soon as I got into elder care, they just really lifted me up. A lot of legal financial advisors were instrumental to my success, and super grateful for them. So I just embarked on this journey and trained people to think, all I need you to know is that Sarah serves seniors, and we have a responsibility to work together to serve the seniors in our country. And so you asked about Connect Our Elders. Every time I have an idea, a vision in my mind, I will go to GoDaddy and I will buy the URL. Now, I believe in divine timing, and we may have an idea and nothing comes of it for a long time. We don't know. We might meet somebody and have a feeling that there's going to be collaboration, but it's just not right now. But that doesn't mean 2 years from now it might not be, right? You and I are now doing this right now. We've talked and haven't really done anything before. So divine timing. I had this idea, Connect Our Elders. I bought the URL and it sat in my GoDaddy account for about 3 years. And at the time I was being offered partnership and sales management role in the home care company I worked for. And it was a phenomenal opportunity. I love the owner, one of my dearest friends. And I really thought and reflected on it. And I decided, I think now's the time. Like, if I'm going to work as hard as I do, I'm going to build my own legacy. And so that's when I took the leap of faith and decided to move forward with Connect Our Elders. And I will even say then to anybody that is thinking about doing their own thing, don't feel like you have to have it all figured out in the beginning, because Connect Your Elders has evolved a lot over the last 3 years. So the key, you have to get started.
I really truly think that the entrepreneurial spirit, I surround myself with a lot of people who own businesses, and from friends to family and individuals that I meet every single day in networking events. And sometimes businesses just don't evolve into, this is turning into like a business networking video right now, how to start, how to be an entrepreneur, but it really helps everybody involved. Is that sometimes you just are trying to understand the process to figure things out, and might it be 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the line. Business owners don't flourish until sometimes 5, 10 years until they figure things out and they go through enough obstacles, And so I'm happy that you found your space, and I'm happy that you wake up every day and that you want to serve. And that's like super important every day, because if you obviously everything has obstacles, but if you want to serve, and I think in a senior care community, you can't give up on the people, because our families are stressed, they have anxiety, they are not sure what to do. Their parents are leaving the hospital, and they have to figure out how to, serve them in their last days of their lives. And so we have to be responsible of that decision to help them, to advocate them, to make their life a little bit easier. So, there's not many people out there like that, and so it's a big responsibility that you took on. So I commend you.
Well, and I commend you, because like I said in the beginning, I follow your stuff, and you equally have just as high of a passion, I can tell, in the way that you talk about the work that you do. So kudos to you, Chris, for being passionate and doing the good work.
Thank you. And so this leads into our next question that I'm sure a lot of people have is that now you might not, actually, they might not know you have a military background. And so if they don't follow you, you do post on things that you actually are proud of and things that you've accomplished too. So tell us about your military background.
So I went to military college, first person in my family to go to college. I come from a small town, humble beginnings. Dad's a logger, mom still cleans houses. Very grateful for how I grew up now. When we're younger, we don't quite recognize it, but very grateful for the work ethic and the big heartedness, right? The authenticity that I learned from my parents. So I got lucky, and I crossed paths with the junior ROTC instructor, who happened to just say, "Where are you going to college?" Now, I didn't even realize that it was an option for me. And so, of course, we started talking. He suggested military colleges. So I went to North Georgia Military. I didn't finish out my degree there. I did my last semester online. That's a long story. 9/11 happened, lots of activations, life decisions.
Yeah.
But my second semester, like many cadets, we would take it off and go join the Army National Guard, Air Guard, Marine Corps Reserve, what have you. Well, I did that, went back to school for the summer semester, was in the next semester, and then 9/11 hit. And I remember it was like a mass exodus from the college campus. And so I did get activated, and I went to Fort Benning. Then I went to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, where we were doing detainee operations back right after 9/11. So certainly a very interesting experience. Went back to school, got activated again, got activated for Hurricane Katrina, a bunch of different stuff. And so fast forward, I end up doing some work full time for the Georgia Army National Guard, teaching, career counseling, working in the Joint Operations Center. And then in 2008, I decided to get out. I really, really missed it. I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore. So when you hear about veterans having this sort of identity crisis, it feels real. And I kind of, even though everything was good in life, I felt something was missing until I found elder care. And so I got out, and then I re-entered in 2016 because I missed it. And lo and behold, shortly after that, I was fortunate to go back to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. It was really fascinating to have been there in the beginning and then to go back so many years later. And so I was there 2018 to 2019, came right home, went right back to work to the home care company that I was with. And I'm still serving today in the Tennessee Army National Guard now. And why people ask me all the time, why do you keep doing it? Because look, when you get older, you start to become wiser and have these revelations, right? The military is a love-hate relationship. Of course, it's not always fun, but you realize when you get older that there's nothing in life that you love all the time, except for maybe your kids. Okay. And so you just,
your interests and hobbies to get smaller and your circle gets smaller.
right. And so you have to remind yourself of the bigger purpose, why you're doing it, the things that you love about it. I mean, I talk to home care company owners all the time. Do you think every day for them is joyful? And no, it can be a grind. But if you tap
we
into
ask for a problem to solve, you know, so that's what we're asking for. The phone call is not calling always about roses. You are solving a problem. The testimonials are great because you help them. But yeah, I agree with you.
right.
You're asking for an obstacle to resolve.
Yes. And you know, it can be so the correlation between military elder care, finding elder care, finding my place in the civilian world really felt good, and it's feeling better and better, right, as the journey continues. I continue to serve. People ask why. Because being in the reserve components, you work all week, you do your military duty, you work another week, so every month you've got 2 weeks with no break. I serve because I am so grateful for what the military has done for me. Coming from where I come from, humble beginnings, it was my launching pad. It is what created the initial opportunities for me to go on and do something, right? And I'm beyond grateful. I just extended for another year. I'm not sure when I will get out because I love the soldiers too. I love mentoring them. And I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
Any home care company that listens to this, I've been preaching it for years, but I literally have started executing on it with my home care clients I have. Not the clients, not the elder, but the agencies. Yeah. Go to the employer support of the Guard and Reserve and do the statement of support so that way you can be a veteran-friendly employer. I have tested it out. In my National Guard unit, took an agency's job flyers and I said, here's this job opportunity, guys. We have elders in our community that are not getting care as timely as they should be because we have a lack of people to fulfill the mission.
Yeah.
And over 50% of those soldiers took the job flyer. And then when I had drill the next time, I had soldiers coming up to me and asking me for more flyers because they went home and talked to their friends and their significant others.
Yeah.
Your companies should really start talking to these reserve service members.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I want to do it. I've not done that. You got to show me how to do that.
I absolutely will. It's free and it takes 5 minutes.
Yeah. Lots of veterans have come across our desk here, and many are, amputees and etc. The things that they've gone through and what they face and the obstacles, especially what has to do with the activities of daily living. And so really it's really nice to know one thing when I'm hearing, and if what resonates with me is that you're a fighter. You don't give up. You're persistent. And like these are things that you need someone to be able to be a senior care advocate, because family members, they some already gave up. Like they've been doing this, they've been the caretaker for a long time. So we have the burnout. So when they come to us, we need to be able to ride this through all the way through and tell them that, hey, listen, we're not going to give up on you. We're going to try to do everything we can. I mean, we'll make things better for you and help you and get that relief and get that resource to be able to guide you. And so a lot of home care owners that I've seen too, and that I've talked to, is that they're willing to be good, but to be great. And then there's another step to be top notch. And in order to be top notch and be great and, good to great to top notch, you can't give up. And you have to be able to the family members know that you're willing to do that, or they're just going to go down that rabbit hole and go somewhere else. And that's
right. Or they just continue to suffer unnecessarily. Now let's be honest with our audience. Some of the situations, because there's not the financial wherewithal, and maybe they are not a veteran that qualifies for aid and attendance. It can be difficult, and we can try to leverage the community resources. there are those situations that feel nearly impossible to get a solution in place. But I think so long as we continue to put the effort into it and let the family know that we care and we are going to continue to try to come up with a creative resource, at least then they know they're not alone, and they can continue to feel like, okay, maybe there's some hope. Somebody, you said fighter spirit, somebody is fighting for me, but those situations are difficult and sad.
Yeah. And so people need to know is that sometimes there is a point where we can't do anything, and depending on if they have a resource. I mean, so I know a lot of home care companies always say is that we're capped out on all the things that we can do. We have to let our family members know, but transparency, words of affirmation, and follow up all have to happen for them to walk away and say, hey, listen, this provider, this advisor did everything they can for me, and I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
But when they don't feel that when they walk away, then that means all you have to do, what I've learned over the years, is find more resources, find more people that do it, and if it's not you, find other people that do it better.
Right.
And so that way you can say, okay, you know what? All right, I have a trick. Today's a trick. I'm going to pull it out of my hat. I have another person. Give them a call and see if you can do it. You don't always have to be the expert, and everyone tries to be the expert. And that's not really good. If you're not a veteran expert, then find someone that is. You're just as serving them if you're not serving the veteran population, you're not on the list in your state or anything. At least refer them to somebody that knows you're going to take care of them. Whatsoever, and then say your niche is dementia. Okay, stay in your scope and your niche, what you do well in, and your caregivers, but find somebody. And we have so many providers in every state. There's got to be someone that's going to be saying, I got it.
So, when I find somebody reaches the level of expert, it's not because they know everything themselves, right? They may be at the top of their game in a certain area, which is great. But we become experts when we are willing to collaborate with other people, to admit when we don't know something as well as somebody else, and we're willing to bring them in, right? When we're willing to collaborate, not only with other resources on the continuum, but when we're even willing to collaborate with our competitors when the time comes. If you do not have the caregivers to service the need, please find some of your competitors that you trust, so that way you don't leave that family just hanging.
Yeah. Okay, you have 80 caregivers on your team. The other home care company has 80. Now we have 160 resources. Now double that. And so your competitors should be your best friends. The point is really, and this is our mission in our office, it's not about the care hours and the billable hours and the money and the rate and all that. It's about the presence. The presence,
so I love it.
The presence is number one, and there's no cost that we will do. We don't need to make anything. The presence has to be the focus of it. And so,
Chris, do you agree? If you do the right thing, the money comes.
I say it's a reward. It's only a reward. It's not anything to be, to infatuate on, because we know that material things are not that make you happy. There may be for some people a necessity, but it's only the reward of the hard work. That's all it was. And so if you look back at how many years, how it takes to even to get there, all those things are just, I actually, not enough people pat themselves on the back. They should actually humbly say that this was the reward of the time that I put in. And that's what you receive. And so I always say everyone has that opportunity in America. Everyone has that opportunity, but no one's different than the entrepreneur or the person who doesn't have it. They need to put in the time and the work, and you're going to receive the reward.
Now, you have to do the work. That's the thing. When I'm working with agencies, I mean, I know this is kind of off the Connector Elders, but I have learned this through my Connector Elders journey. Nobody else can do the work for you. Like, you can have the supportive people that will elevate you, and you'll have those strategic partners that will be a part of your journey of getting to the next level, but you have to do the work.
I can't even, I personally, over the years, I don't feel good unless I just do it myself. But also too is I've learned over the years too is that I can't do it on my own. I learned the delegation of actually finding people that care as much as I do, you know. But then it's good to know everything what goes on in your business from A to Z, so you could step in and it doesn't skip the beat. The heart's still pumping all the time. But no matter what, though, it's finding your people that surround by you, because even though we all have this passion and we love what we do and want to serve it, but we're only as good as the people that are surrounded by us too.
See,
So
I love that. You're talking about when you get to the phase of when you hire and you delegate. And when I'm saying you got to do the work, it's like you do the work to get to that point. But then sometimes you maybe can relate to this. As the owner, you have to do the self work to learn to let go, to be able to delegate. So it's always about like doing the work to improve yourself so you can improve your company.
yeah, I mean, a leader always admits his mistakes. A leader always tries to put himself and have empathy in other people's shoes. He always steps in and it was able to do any task that needs to be involved, because he should have been the master of all the tasks that were delegated to the individual. So he should always want to spend his time on someone to be able to be better. And so sometimes it's people, we become selfless in this world and we realize it's all about me. But really, we would be nothing without have the people that are surrounded by us. So it's always good to be conscientious of that, you know. And so I want to stress about the fact of that when they like enroll in your services, not everybody knows about the process of it, right? But you come up with something which is really great. So that means that this is the devotion that you have in your organization. You want to put them through a process, and you have a six step advisory process. So what does that entail on your end?
So let me share. It's not rocket science, right? It's when I was asked by a mentor, what is it that you do? And at first I was like, I was having a hard time saying, I know what I do and I can do what I do.
Pitch.
But I'm like, how can I explain it, what I do? And so what we
All right, you're in the hot seat.
is the 6-step advisory process. So and here's the thing, a home care agency, a care management firm, a placement agent, this process. So look, if this resonates with you, please feel free to use it. And so it's a 6-step advisory process, which is the free assessment or complimentary assessment. Now that's either via phone, Zoom, in person, whatever the person feels comfortable with. I will tell you that much of the work that I've done over the last 3 years has been done by the phone or via Zoom, and it has worked exceptionally well. Okay. We live in a new time now.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because Connector Elders is not the care provider, is not the care manager. We partner with vetted preferred providers. And so we do the full-on discovery process, which is the assessment. Then based on what we learn through that empathetic, emotionally present discovery process and the particulars of the situation, demographics, location, diagnoses, all the needs, all of that, right? Then we can provide education to the family, you know, based on years of experience. Okay, based on what you're sharing with me, this is what I recommend to you. Now, it's sometimes just caregiving services. Sometimes it's a combination of resources, caregiving, care management, and then some technology resource, right? But I have found that we need to be more emotionally connected during this discovery process to be able to open the door to provide the education to the family. We cannot be senior care advisors and just say, great, thanks for calling. How old is your mom? What's her diagnosis? Where does she live? And what sort of services do you think you want? And what do you think the schedule is? But unfortunately, that's what a lot of people do in our industry, okay? We need to slow down, take a breather, connect with these families. The first thing that I will always say to the person I'm talking to, I am so glad that you called me. I want you to know that you're not alone. I am here to do everything I can to reduce your overwhelm and your stress and guide you through this process. So that's an example of how the assessment starts happening, and then providing the education on the continuum of care, what's available to them, and then making that solid recommendation. Connector Elders does not give a list of companies to a family. We are not selling people's information to multiple providers. I am adamantly opposed to that model. I do not think that it does anything to help families. I think it just increases the overwhelm and stress if their information is sold to multiple providers, because they start being inundated with phone calls.
Yeah.
I also don't think it's good for the providers either, because they're receiving families, prospective clients, that nobody's done any due diligence to see if they're a good fit, if they can afford the services, if they're even in the geographic area. Sometimes, I've heard these stories. So point being,
right,
educate the family in making professional, solid recommendations, which means unless the family asks me for 2 caregiving agencies based on geographic location, needs, and what I know to be the caregiver capacity, let's say, or if there's any special programs, I will recommend 1 caregiving agency to that family, but I will let them know if this ends up not being the right fit, then circle back to me and we'll find you another resource. But taking that approach, what it does is it reduces it. Because if you think about any of the other professional services that people hire, there's a reason why you're talking to them, because you want their professional recommendation. And they're looking for a leader. These families, Chris, you know this, by the time they get to us, they've been stressed out sometimes for years. They're feeling hopeless, lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're looking for somebody to guide them through this darkness, and I just find the best way to do that is to take that professional recommendation approach. Now, it goes for recommendations for caregiving services, recommendations to care managers, senior move companies,
planners, notaries.
Yeah. And so you have to know who your vetted resources are, right? So I don't recommend anybody that I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the recommendations. And then the 4th step is decision making. Now, you might think, well, you just said you make this professional recommendation. Yes. But we do a lot of coaching in this industry, typically with the adult children, right?
Yeah.
It's a traumatic time. We've got the role reversal. It's psychologically trying, emotionally draining, right? Mentally confusing, this whole process.
Yep.
So the decision-making step in the process means that I'm there to be that sounding board. I'm there to be that coach. I'm there to answer questions the whole way, to encourage, to guarantee, to tell that adult daughter, adult son, you're doing the best you know how. You're doing great. You're making the right decision, because sometimes they have to make the executive decision, right? So that's how we work through the decision-making process.
Now, the level of care can be, companionship to, need standby assistance, hands-on, or full-blown transfer care. As we know, that's part of our assessments, or they're just completely independent on certain ADLs. Now, how do you determine what level of care you actually need? Are you diving into an ADL assessment, or if they're local, are you going to see them?
So that's a great question. So because I have lots of years of experience, you can get the face sheet from the discharge planner through the conversation with the family or talking to the referral source.
Yeah.
But it is the care provider. So when I make the professional recommendation to the family, and we'll go with the caregiving agency example, right? I've recognized that's what they need. So I will write, based on my assessment process, discovery process, I'm gathering all this information. It's a full intake is what it is. So I will have an idea of the level of care, but when I make the professional recommendation and then I warmly hand it off to the caregiving agency, they now take over and they still have to go and do their in-person assessment. And then because the contractual, I don't want to say contractual, we try not to say that, but the agreement between the family is with the actual person delivering the care, which are my providers.
So you want them to dive into the care plan oversight details, but you're still gonna and take it, process it, and say,
Mhm.
okay, what part of their daily life or financial life or emotional life, whatever it is that got going on, you're going to give it and give them advice. But
I
then,
do.
and then
Yeah.
give them and figure out, it's kind of like we're driving down the road, we're trying to figure out what path we're going to take. Are we going to go right, left, or we're going straight? And so we might be figuring out that pathway, because I remember when I first was going out to the hospitals, and I was like, I really was like digging deep of like how what's this navigational process that the family members are going through, and I learned this at a young age. When I was 9 years old, I was following my dad to nursing homes, foster homes, to assisted livings, and he was a podiatrist, so he's a foot doctor, but he had practices and he had patients that were homebound. And so he's like, I'm going to serve the community outside of my office too on 2 days of the week. I'm going to go to assisted livings, nursing homes. So when I was 9, I went to work with my dad like all the time since I was even, for many years, even during college. I loved going
Thank
to
you for
my dad.
sharing this. This gives me so much insight into why you are the person you are. That's amazing.
I always, I always should share my story more and more about it, but it's in my bones. It was back in the day when people were smoking cigarettes in the doctor's lobby. I was sitting there. I always wanted to wear a suit and a tie. I was excited to go to work with my dad, and some of his workers still laugh, like, "Oh, I remember when you were, you wore that red tie to work." But like, I was always wondering and curious about the pathway that people have to path that everyone has to take. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna call it the pathway program. And this is the wellness integration of life, really, is that we are going to go through different pathways. And that's what we're trying to do in our industry, is that we're trying to figure out like where are they all on this road. You're driving, you're trying to figure this out. You're living life, you're trying to figure out like, where am I going to go now? And so we're supposed to take them, if they're veering right, we're trying to veer them back onto the straight road again. So my goal is I want to take you to the right path, but I
Right.
can't do the right pathway. I only can figure out, about what's going on in your life. And that's when our wellness integration program collided with our pathway program. And it had to be with what part of your life things got going on. But we're going to invite everybody in the community that we can and fulfill all the categories and add them as resources, so that we're
Yeah.
going to say that, hey, listen, it's not just us as a provider, but we're going to also give you the right path way to be able to have a good wellness of life too. So that means connecting with psychologists,
Oh
advisors,
my God.
notaries, and just like how you did, but we packaged up and called a name and went to the hospital system. We say not only does this tie into our pathway of life program and our integrated wellness program that's to do with nutrition, physical activity, ABCD and EFG, that's to do with activities of daily living, but also too is what we wanted to do is we want to focus in on the hospital readmissions that family members are dealing with, but they can't solve these problems unless you also solve their daily living life.
Yes.
So that's what our goal was. And so we wrap it up in a bow, and you want to make sure that only way you could deliver is have the community people involved, so that way they can be the experts in those type of scenarios, and you stay in your focus of your niche whatsoever. And so I see where you're coming from with like your advisory process and everything, but I know that there's a process of like how long it takes, to the point of like, hey, listen, a lot of family members like, I want to get to scheduling. I don't need you to come back to a lot of this. What happens now after COVID? Like, don't come to our house. Send me the assessment over the phone or do it over the
Yeah.
phone. I want to get to scheduling.
Right.
I want to know if you can schedule a caregiver. A lot of times, like, yeah, same day. If you do this right now on the phone, today we're going to scheduling,
And
not
that's
tomorrow. And
yeah,
so
a lot of agencies are doing the virtual assessment, sending the DocuSign, and it's working. We have proven that it can work, because once we do get the caregiver, well, remember, Connect Our Elders is not a caregiving agency. The caregiving agency providers I have, right? If that's the case, they're not doing the assessment in person, but they're doing a virtual. and then moving directly to staffing, and they send that caregiver out there, and then usually a client care coordinator or care manager will meet there. That's when they're getting eyes on and can make any adjustments to the care plan, right? The way that it works between the caregiving agency and Connect Our Elders is that I'm always involved. It is a collaborative communication and effort between Connect Our Elders and the caregiving agency. Yeah.
You go to the
no, I don't go. But what happens is the caregiving agency will report back to me on their findings, on their plan of care, right? But then with systematic updates. Like I want updates on my clients monthly.
Oh, great.
Now, oftentimes I'm always in communication with the family, so I'll know what's going on too. But it's sort of that quality assurance aspect, and that's why.
You do that through a virtual home care company too, as well. Can you do that with clients that another home care company in another state?
Yes, and I do. So I have providers in other parts of the country, and so it's really just a report. It's as if in this. It's like Connect Elders is the referral source. So would you not update your referral sources, like your typical referral sources for your caregiving agency? You would update them on what's going on with their clients, right?
If you want to build the trust.
So that's what I expect from my providers, is to know if there's any changes with my clients' needs. Are they improving? Are they declining? Have you recognized that there's a need for another resource that maybe I'm not aware of yet? And then they circle back to me, right? Because that's professional. Hey, we've recognized there's a need for a care manager now. Do you have somebody in mind? Let's discuss it. Maybe we want to recommend the same person.
Love that. I you know what? Family members feel that they want to stay with their provider. And I repeat this all the time in their office. If they don't hear follow-up, if you don't bombard them that you show that you are caring, they're gonna start thinking and have thoughts. And then the moment that your employees too are the same thing, and clients, you have to always treat them equally. I always say, don't separate the training. It's still the same mindset. It's still the same thought. Don't let them have the thought. You know what I mean? Like if you know that you're doing everything you can and you're following up and case management's there, and if you once you stop, then the thoughts are coming and they're thinking that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Right. So try to stay
day by day. It happens. So I said 1 hour or 1 day, it could be detrimental. So,
it can. And you got to think about the demographic that we're serving. I've seen it over the years. Everybody in the agency is thinking everything's going fine with Mrs. Jones. Like staffing knows and the marketer knows and everybody knows, yep, there's been some call-offs, but Mrs. Jones hasn't said anything. So we're thinking that it's good to go. And then all of a sudden you get the phone call that they're canceling services. You're like, but I thought everything was fine. Well, because sometimes they're uncomfortable in communicating their dissatisfaction for various reasons. I mean, whether it be fear that if they do that, they're not going to get the same type of care, or they just don't want to be a bother, or based on how they were raised in their generation, you don't complain, just whatever the issues are.
They don't want the caregiver to lose their job,
Right, exactly.
They're protecting them.
Number one, it starts with a desire to make sure that you are providing the highest level of service possible. Number two, your next consideration is, don't you want to retain your clients because you're running a business? So make it systematic where you're following up, because that way what happens is when you ask people, we really care about how you're feeling about the service you're receiving. We want to make sure that you're happy, you're satisfied, you're comfortable. Give people the permission to give that feedback, because if they mention to you that maybe they're not so happy with that caregiver, you're allowed the ability to replace the person and still maintain the client. Don't wait for potential issues to fester. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. We call it care plan oversight, and it can never be, it has to be so perfected to the point of the care plan oversight means that there should be no question that they understand what the expectations are of the family members. And so someone needs to be dedicated to this job, because this is how the client has a good experience. And that's how your employee is going to have a good experience.
Mhm.
So that care plan oversight is the foundation of what, I mean, you and I, wherever we go out, if you go out to eat, if you go take your kids to an adventure park, whatever, or we go to the gym, we hire a trainer, these are different. We want a good experience to get
Mhm.
a good outcome, no matter what it is in life. So the care plan oversight has to be like treated that we really want to know what our care professionals and our care team, they know
Yes.
exactly what the family members want, and at the same time, and our employees, that they have no question whatsoever. They understand what the family members' expectations are to have a good experience, so that way you have a good experience there too. Now, granted, we know that some clients are not, so they could be, they can be physical abusive, they can be
Mhm.
it can be verbal, and there's all these nuances, but we're not going to go into all the negativity.
So
But
that's where I would say also make sure that you're providing a safe space for your caregivers
yes,
to let you know if they're not comfortable with the client, because some are too afraid to let you know because they need that job. But if you create a culture where they're not comfortable in a situation, but you tell them we will do everything we can to get you on a different client,
yeah,
why would you keep a care professional and a client that's not meshing well together? It's not healthy for either parties, right? But you got to create that safe space for both sides to be able to communicate with your
yeah,
agency.
yeah. Feedback's important. And so, in fact, and everybody needs to know that there's no bias for any type of, you could say anything you'd like to say, and we're going to protect you. And so I just go back to family. I just go back to my family. Like, I know that not all family members are like this, but there's got to be, when we die, and I see the senior care industry, you're lucky to have one or two people that you could say in your life, or maybe a handful of people that really, truly, truly cared about you. So it's good to let everyone know, like, listen, like, we're gonna protect you. And this
Yeah.
is a very important word. Like, I'm gonna protect you like you are my sister. I'm gonna protect you. I'm not gonna, if you have something you want to talk about, I want to hear your side, and I want to understand what's going on both sides. And tell the family members that too. We're gonna protect you too at the same time. So everybody knows that we're coming from a good place of protecting each other. So we
Yeah.
get back to that foundation where everybody, we're going through the same mission and the same goal, and we're going to protect each other to be able to get to the common goal with what their expectations are. And just, that's how it's, some
I love everything you're saying, Chris. I'm going to have to come out and visit your agency because everything you're mentioning from the programs and
start
how
an
you think
affinity.
about it, like I'm going to have to come do a site visit and
Oh, we're
learn.
going to start an affinity in your state.
All right. Let me know. I'm willing to help.
That's what we started Empire for. So we started Empire to start home care companies in the U.S. You know, and so okay, now the cost. Everybody's waiting. Everybody stayed
Yeah.
on our podcast. I know if you stayed with us for 42 minutes, then you gotta know, you gotta hear the cost of your services, right? So
So
what are the associated costs and the process and your fees for this?
there is no cost for connector elders. And before I made the decision for how how I generate revenue, I spoke to a lot of my referral sources that I had had over the years when I worked in house at a caregiving agency, because I knew that it could be perceived as a conflict of interest, right? If providers are paying connector elders and not the families, and how do you know that you're referring to the right choices? I knew that could be a concern. But I also knew, and I'm glad that I followed my intuition, I also wanted to be able to provide this level of education, guidance, care navigation complimentary, because I had learned through many years of experience that if they felt as though they had to pay for an assessment fee, like many aging life care managers, they'll talk to you, but if you want an assessment, right, you gotta pay for it. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. It's just
Yeah,
different.
it's their
Because
time.
remember, I'm not a care manager. I will match them up with a care manager, but I'm sort of that first point of contact to provide that education, that sense of it's going to be okay, and to walk them through and navigate them to the appropriate resources. So there is no charge for connector elders.
Yeah,
Connector elders gets paid by the providers.
great. Okay, good. Okay, that's important. So the provider will pay for you to navigate this, go through the whole process. So say for example, there's other home care companies that want you to contact their clients on making sure that they are receiving the care that they want, and then getting that feedback, and then bringing that back to the home care provider. Would you do that?
So the way that it works right now is that like no caregiving agency is giving me their client list and saying, hey, can you call them, make sure everything's fine. So I'm not doing like a survey service. I will get referrals from caregiving agencies. For example, hey, Sarah, we have a client on service and we really think that they could benefit from care management. Can you take it from here, talk to them, figure out the nuances of the situation, who you think will be the best care manager for the situation? And so I get referrals from care managers, from home care companies, from placement agents, but I'm also referring back to them. Now, some have asked, look, the way that I took the conflict of interest out of it, or potential conflict, because of how I wanted to make sure consumers did not have to pay upfront for the education and the navigation. And I still feel strongly that I made the right decision. The way that there's no conflict of interest is because every provider pays the same. It's not one provider pays this amount, another provider pays that amount. It's the same across the board. So there is no financial incentive to refer to one over another.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. No, it's okay. That's fair. And everybody's treated equally at the same time. Everybody's getting served the same way. Now, um, is down the seniors budget, and we know that seniors are on a budget and some are on fixed income, and so do you take that in consideration when recommending your services?
Yes. So I teach this. It's kind of interesting. It came about with a referral I received many years ago, an ALS client, younger wife, younger, two daughters, newly in college. Well, we know what the end result is going to be with that diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
So it was referred to me by a CPA. And then we brought in a financial planner to put together a budget. And she asked me, can you put together some financial projections? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, what's it going to cost now? What's it going to cost in 60 days and 90 days? Or,
Yeah.
So I coined the term cost of care projections. And that's what I started using all the time. And so I have always been asking questions like, do you have an estate plan, a trust? When was it last reviewed? Do you have a financial planner? When did you last talk to them? I can't make appropriate care recommendations unless I know what the financial picture is, because I don't want to leave anybody in a situation where they could potentially outlive their money. Because if we do that, then are we really helping? No.
Yeah.
But what we can do is say, I understand you want to stay in your home based on your budget. Let's make that happen. Here's the reality, though. And that's the thing. I'll never sugarcoat it with families, because that would not be responsible. I would not be being ethical if I'm going to sugarcoat reality. So if you want to stay at home based on your budget, here's the care that you need right now, the number of hours. Okay, we can do that. But when needs increase, this is the associated cost. And this is what it looks like in your budget. So what I'll do is I'll build in triggers there. Here's the reality. When your needs increase to this in the home, then we need to start looking at some alternative funding solutions. Or we got to start looking at placement options, right? But I do cost of care projections that help through the entire process, from the moment that I become the advocate to the end.
Yeah, so okay, that's very thorough, and I understand that. So that's good. It's good to be transparent, because they need to know if it's not going to work out to be able to have the service. How can they want to go on to the next? So it's just being honest and transparent with them, and letting them know. Just not every care provider, they can provide care because they don't agree to their rates. And so I like that. The resources that are available now, I know obviously makes sense that you are an advocate of this, but for veterans now regarding their care, what are you offering for resources for veterans?
So I have a relationship with the Vet Assist program, and so that's I'm sure you're familiar with them. There's other companies that are out there that do this. You know, they'll handle the application process for a veteran or a surviving spouse. If they meet the criteria, right, and they determine that they could qualify, they'll handle the application process. The cool thing with those programs, so with aid and attendance, which the VA does not do a good job about proactively letting people know about this.
Yeah.
So get it out there, tell all your friends, even if
Yeah.
you're not in our space.
Yeah.
Just talk about the aid and attendance program, please.
Yeah, and not enough. Even if they do, there's a waiting list for some states too to even get on.
So it's a catch-22 though with the aid and attendance. You have to show that you're already paying for care, but in order to qualify for it, the financial criteria is pretty tough. It's like, yeah, how are you expecting that they've had the disposable income to pay for it? So programs like the Vet Assist program provide, I call it a bridge loan, bridge financing, you know, and they'll pay the agency. So that is a reputable program. There's also Veterans or Care Planning Institute, and there's some others coming up. Now there's the direct care from the VA, right? And they recently just raise the reimbursement rates. You've got to get credentialed, like a caregiving agency has to be credentialed to be able to do that. But I encourage, so the point of what Connector Elders would do in this situation is, if you are an elder veteran, any veteran, please go to the VA and enroll, because I've had a lot of elder veteran clients over the year who never even went and applied for disability, and they were like World War II storming the beaches of Normandy, and you're like, what? But it's a different generation, and but understand those resources. So direct care that the VA pays for, right? Caregiving in the home that the VA pays for. And then you've got aid and attendance, which has that financial criteria, all of that, wartime, certain dates around it. And I can send anybody the information that wants it.